and we'll talk about that in a second. So I just want to go through um, some comments about what I've been seeing on the blogs, some suggestions, talk about some trends, and then and talking about some upcoming assignments. So and I have a little cheat sheet here that you should also be able to read at the same time. Um, so one thing that I asked for in the first video was for everybody to edit their blog template to make it easier for me to find the articles and look at them and just look at the look and feel. Let's see, I flagged Emily's blog here as having a good layout. Um, it would be nice for everybody to have a I guess I would call this a banner or a flag that's customized. I did want everyone to have an about section. About doesn't have to necessarily have a photo of you, and shouldn't have any personal information like your phone number. A photo is fine if you want to put it. Just so, because keep in mind these are all public blogs, so anyone can come to them, come to it, and you might want to give just a little bit of background bio info. It's nice that she has a contact section here. And what I really like about it is that it's really easy to scroll down and see the most recent posts, and it has the date here and also a photo kind of teaser for each one. So that just makes it easier for me or other readers to find what we're looking for, and then and so everything is showing up and all looks nice. So if you haven't edited your blog template yet, please do that. Let's see. So number 2 is so I'd say probably half, maybe more than half of you are doing a pretty good job with photos. Let's see, I've flagged Daisy's here, so she has a flag or banner as well. Oh, these are just photos here. And some of you have been doing these little photo slideshows as well, that I think is a nice feature. Oh, and here's actually she has an Adobe Spark page. This is one thing that you can do. And I wasn't going to talk about Adobe Spark yet, but I'll do it here. So remember that I did say that you could do for one or more of your stories, you could do an Adobe Spark page, which does require you to go to the Adobe or spark.adobe.com, register. There are free features, so I assume this feature is free that she's done, and I think it's just a really kind of more up-to-date, modern format of telling a story, and it really integrates pictures and text really well. And it also gets you to think about, how am I going to present, use both pictures and text, and you can also use other forms of multimedia to tell a story. Excuse me. So remember that I did say that if you did that on one or more, then you would get some extra credit for it. And it looks to me like she was able to integrate, or actually she just put this link here. So that's how you would do it. You can create a new post and then put a link that goes to Adobe Spark. And this is one of her general stories. And so anyway, I like the way that she's integrated photos in here. You can do a lot with alignment in any of the blog tools. So you insert a photo and you click on the photo, and it usually gives you a couple different options. One is for captions, and I do think although a lot of you are putting plenty of really good photos in your blog posts, which is great, most of you are not doing captions, and captions are a way to add just a little bit of extra information. So, it's useful for me to know, what the place is where this photo is taken as the reader, and that these are her friends as opposed to just some random people. So the use of captions here is really good, but also alignment. So you can click on the photo. This one here is aligned to the left side, which means it goes to the left, and that also means that text will wrap around it to the right side of the photo here. Don't just dump all the photos at the end. Put the photos where at the spot in the story where you're talking about that thing or people or whatever it is that's shown in the photo. And it really helps the readers to get a sense of where you're at, what you're talking about. It adds a whole lot to it. Okay. Um, yeah, so definitely start adding captions and start putting the photos throughout the story, not just at the end. Yeah, and Rayona has done that pretty well too. Several of you are doing it, but in general, in terms of good placement and use of captions, I'd say the majority of people aren't doing all of those things. So no one, almost no one, maybe I've noticed one or two of you are adding links, and I want everybody should be adding links in their story. There's some story, like if the story is really reflective, um, you know, maybe it's not as appropriate because so what am I going to link to? So, but you should link to additional information on any. I mean, most of you are talking about places, so a place places that you're talking about. So, if you went to the London Tower, then link to the wiki page for London Tower or to the London Tower website itself. You can link to like main like whole web pages, or it's even better if you link to a specific web page inside of a bigger site that gives lots of detailed information. So I just kind of found this one here. A lot of you are, so one of the required story types is to do a kind of like top 5 or top 10 things to do in a city or part of a city. And this is one I found in Baltimore. Now these underlines here these are links. And so you can actually, some of your templates will allow you to customize what links look like what color they are and what happens. This is a little bit like highly customized here. But this is what I mean by I want the links to be in the text. So like here, I can tell as the reader, if I want more information on the brewer's art, I can click on that and it'll probably go to their website or go to maybe a review of the brewer's art and get some more information, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. Don't just, a couple of you have put some links and you kind of put them at the end, almost as if they're resources or works cited for an essay. So, and that's not so useful because maybe the reader doesn't get to the end of your article, and so they don't realize links are down there. So put them like a word or phrase, like the London Tower. When you put that in a sentence, then select that and put that link in there. Another thing that this reminds me of is you can see the good placement here of photos is the kind of layout done here. So you see here if this is going to be and this is kind of typical of kind of like a top 10 or top places to see type article where you have the subheaders that are bolded and set aside. So some of you have done that with kind of numbers or something like that. But it makes it a lot easier for the reader to kind of scroll through and understand where he or she is at inside of the article. So that's one thing most of you can do a little bit better at, and almost all of you can do a lot better at adding links. So again, additional information of the places that you are referring to in your articles is what the links would be to. For the most part, I mean, there's other types of links that you might be able to add as well. So we've already talked about Adobe Spark. And this is a different story here. So here she said, okay, well, I've decided to use Adobe Spark, and she adds the link. I think there is a way to do an embed of a whole Adobe Spark page inside of one of your, if you click on the HTML kind of pop-up window for a blog post, and then you can paste in the embed for a Spark story. Adding a link is fine. So the Adobe Spark stories are really for stories that have a lot of visuals, where you say to yourself, well, this story or this article in particular can be told, with half a lot of visuals and half text. So you do still have to write up an article, a story. So this would be the kind of beginning part here. Um, and so, but think, I mean, some of your article types might not work so well for this. Others, they uh, they will. So obviously, a kind of like travel adventure, a day trip, things like that. We do want to have plenty of facts, information, kind of mini stories, dialogue if you have it, um, things like that in order to tell the story. Okay, so and so one of the reasons why I think Adobe Spark is so useful is because the visuals add so many details. Okay, and in general, I'd say since early like September or mid-September to now, all of you are doing better at adding more details. Some of you still have to kind of, I think, force yourself or remember that, oh, I need to add more and more. I mean, it is possible to add so many details that you bog down the storytelling, but at this point, I don't know if anyone's gotten to that place. So when professors saying details, 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 what does it mean? So historical or everyday facts. You know what? If you're going to a castle or the Tower of London, you don't want the article to be completely bogged down with all the facts because there's so many historical facts, right? But as you're talking about different rooms and things like that, like 2 or 3 historical facts that really kind of make it more interesting, make it seem more vivid for the reader would be good. By everyday facts, I mean things like how much did that cost of or price of coffee or a pint of beer cost, or you know, what kind of logistics did it take for you to get there on public transportation. Proper nouns, I mean like the names of districts in the city, the names of streets, of cafes. Like there's been several articles where a person's talking about like a particular cafe, but they never give the name. Okay, so those things help the reader in their mind's eye to kind of see, make up what it might be like to be there. Obviously, and some of you also aren't doing this. Like if you're going to have a article about going down to a city district or something like that, you have to have photos. I know that goes back to the previous points, but sometimes some of you are doing pretty good descriptions of places, but there or food or something like that, but then there's no photo to follow it up. So like I said, a lot of you are doing better, rich descriptions, like what it was like to drink that coffee, or what the different types are, give the names, the colors, that sort of thing. Some of you are doing a good job adding kind of mini stories, and by that I meant like if some kind of funny or embarrassing thing happened on your day trip, then you can add that in, and again, it makes it for the reader to feel like they've been there or we're kind of like with you there. So those mini stories are really important for most articles. I mean, some of them they don't apply. Dialogue is also can be very useful. Dialogue is a little bit more tricky in terms of punctuation. Some of you have been having problems with that, not using the commas in the right place or periods or quotation marks. But dialogue's another thing that helps us to feel like we were there. With dialogue, you just don't want to add like reams and reams of it because then it bogs down the story. Reflection, your emotions, like how you felt about something. Lists of things. Sometimes you can even just put a bulleted list. So you know, like of the different types of baguettes or baked goods that were in this particular bakery. Detailed explanations, etc. So those are all the different types of things, and it all depends on what the story is, on what type of details that you can that you want to fit in there. Some of you are doing pretty well on. I can read the story and I say, well, I can tell that this this author kind of spent a little bit of time on thinking about how they're going to structure the story. And others, I'm kind of like, you know, where's the story going, and I'm kind of getting lost as the reader. So for each story, you want to spend a little time thinking about what's the topic or focus really going to be, and that's important because whatever the focus is for the story, that's how you can remember, okay, I need to make sure I continue to stay on the focus. I don't go off on tangents too much. And that also in the beginning, or in journalism we would call it the lead, that you're really starting with that focus in the first couple sentences. Mood, some of you, I'm not sure how much you're thinking about mood. Sometimes the mood, um, a lot of the stories, your stories or have a similar mood. It might be kind of upbeat. It might be kind of reflective. But for some stories, you want to be really specific. If it's was a really dreary day for a day trip, and that kind of summed up the experience, then really kind of think about the words you want to use in your descriptions, how you want to start with. You don't want to start up with a super upbeat lead if really the mood of the story is supposed to be more like dreary, right? Um, or maybe the mood is confusion because you were dealing with the metro or whatever. So think about what it, what the mood is, and how you can make sure that's felt by the reader throughout the story. Um, and then structure. I mean, I showed that Baltimore, the top things to do, and it had a lot of. You can use structure layout to help structure you. Other times it's more chronological. So most of you, when you're talking about day trips, you're like, okay, so we started doing this, and then for lunch we did this, and then we were tired and whatever. So I mean, it is like chronological. You're kind of maybe naturally, or maybe you planned that out. Um, Others, you might want to really think about, okay, so what's the beginning, middle, and end? So whatever it is, make sure you have something in your mind about, okay, well, this is what the structure is going to be, because otherwise stories can sometimes start to ramble and get confusing for the readers. Okay, no matter what it is, make sure the first couple sentences, it's really clear to the reader what the focus and sometimes also the mood of the story is. So grammar. So very few of you are not having some problems with grammar, mostly punctuation. Um, and I think one of the reasons this is because a lot of these stories are kind of have a upbeat style, and you're writing it almost kind of like you might talk. Um, so if you said, my my friend Lisa came up and said, "Where have you been?" The rest of us around the corner, we've been there for 3 hours. Like that's actually three sentences, right? But a lot of you are putting commas instead, because the way you hear it is not as if there's lots of stops in it. It's kind of like in a way, a complete idea. But in reality, when you write it down, that's three distinct sentences there. So you really have to have a period, capital for the next one, and on and on. So there's a lot of run-ons. There's some fragments that like, for example, doesn't have like a noun or a verb in it. And then I'd say the other most common area is in dialogue, where we're not putting the comma or the period in the correct place. So the thing here is just make sure you proofread. Do a lot of editing. Okay. Sometimes with this kind of writing, since it is sometimes so free flowing, I think the tendency is like, oh, read it once and say it sounds good, but just sounds good in your mind doesn't necessarily mean that when the reader's reading it, they don't notice, oh, that's a run-on sentence. AP style. So at this point, you're all juniors. I think everyone, but maybe one person, is a communication or writing major. So you should have had AP style in one of your classes. And that's in any kind of public, written communication is going to follow. Advertising, PR, journalism, AP style. So a lot of you are making just a lot of simple mistakes, like if you say AM, PM, like it's lowercase, P dot M dot for PM, or when you say at the time, if you're saying it's 9 o'clock, you don't have to have the dot dot 00. You just say 9 and then AM or PM, whichever one it is. Numbers, the general rule of numbers. I noticed that with some of you are talking about currency, And currency is one of those where the general rule for numbers in AP style is if it's 9 or below, you write it out. If it's 10 or above, you use the numerals. So if you said the five of us went to the metro, then it would be FIVE. But if it's anything where it's currency or age or something like that, if it's €5, then it would be the euro symbol and then the numeral 5. And I just threw this in here, that any kind of keyboards don't, sold in the U.S. don't usually have the euro symbol on the keyboard, like they do the dollar symbol. But of course, there's all sorts of different ways to add it in. So this is the way to add it in with a Mac, for a Mac, and it's a little bit different if you have a Windows-based laptop, but it's just as easy to put that in there. A good page is if you type in Google like AP Style Owl. This is a resource page that I usually show my students when I teach news writing and reporting, and just goes over a lot of these common things about dates and ages and like sizes. Most of them are associated with punctuation and numerals. Titles, names of things. Most of you are doing pretty good punctuation for proper nouns, like capitalizing them, and titles don't really come into it as much. Okay, so if you're not sure, just Google something, and it's pretty easy. The writing you're doing doesn't tend to come up with lots of any like really obscure